Our story kicks off with a regular girl leaving school who, in a classic twist of fate, gets a one-way ticket to another world courtesy of Truck-kun. She wakes up in the body of Princess Pride, the super-cruel main villain from her favorite dating sim. The second she opens her eyes, she realizes she's totally screwed, because in the original story, she always gets executed. To make matters worse, her younger sister, Tiara, is the top candidate for the throne thanks to her powers, which are a huge deal in the Kingdom of Frisia. But as she starts remembering the game, she recalls that her new dad is about to bite the dust because of a broken wheel. So she bolts to warn him, putting her own life on the line, but the servants save her, even though she told them not to. Seeing them so scared and sorry, she remembers the original princess was an absolute nightmare to them. That's why she just starts bawling and apologizes to everyone for being so awful for years. A little later, her dad calms her down and puts her to bed, promising she'll get to meet her siblings soon. That's when we get a flashback from the game, where the original Pride was messing with a kid in handcuffs, just straight up bullying him. Back in the present, our girl is getting ready to meet him, and she's greeting all the staff by name, something the old Pride would never do. Obviously, this makes everyone start to like her and even think she could inherit the throne with all her knowledge. But she only cares about one thing, changing the timeline so nobody gets a bad ending. After a short walk, she meets her father, who introduces her to her new adopted brother, Stale. This kid has a cool teleportation power, but they've got him in magic suppressing chains because he was forcibly separated from his family. Even so, Pride tries to be nice, but Stale isn't thrilled to be her brother. And for good reason, since he knows he's about to be forced into a contract to be her subordinate. In the game, Pride tricked him with a fake promise of seeing his mom again, only to turn him into her personal slave. Knowing this, Pride visits him at night and offers him the key to his shackles so he can run away with his mom. But Stale refuses because he knows if he escapes, his mother will be punished. And even if they get away, they'll just grab another kid with powers. Basically, Stale came to the mansion knowing he was never going home again. This breaks Pride's heart, so she just leaves him alone. The next day is the contract signing. Stale seems a bit closer to Pride, and she tells him to treat her like a sister. Right then, Chancellor Gilbert, her dad's aide, shows up to praise Pride for her new precognition skills, but he immediately starts making snide remarks and gets told off. Back home, the new siblings explore the mansion, with Pride constantly reminding Stale that they're equals, and he can just call her by her name. Days go by, and Stale gets sick, so she has to take care of him. While she does, she remembers that in the game, she ordered him to kill his own mother. This makes her break down crying, and she promises to always protect him. But she also gives him a special order. If she ever turns evil, he has to be the one to stop her. Then we see Stale's nightmare, which is actually a memory from the original timeline where Pride ordered him to kill his own mom just for kicks. He doesn't remember the details, but he remembers the awful feeling. The next day, we find out Stale's master plan was always to get on the princess's good side so he could convince her to change the laws in the future and see his mom again. But after seeing how terrified she was, he started to wonder if Pride was really as bad as everyone said, and what a princess like her could possibly be afraid of. A little later, she surprises him with a letter from his mother. It turns out, Pride pulled some strings so they can write to each other at least once a year in exchange for a monthly payment. The kid can't handle the emotions and just bursts into tears of joy, especially when his sister assures him that both his mom and his new family love him dearly. In that moment, he realizes that despite all the rumors, Pride genuinely cares about him, and he decides he's going to protect her with everything he's got. Gilbert is not a fan of this development at all. Right after Stale gets the letter, he uses his teleportation power to overhear Gilbert spreading rumors that his new sister treats him horribly. Stale is furious and wants to expose him, but he knows there's not much he can do as a kid. So he secretly vows to get super strong, become Pride's loyal servant, and protect her on her path to the throne. Meanwhile, Tiara is nervous about meeting her siblings on her birthday. While everyone's partying, Stale and Pride are complimenting each other's outfits. When they walk into the main hall, everyone is stunned by the future heirs. Pride feels a little awkward greeting her mother, but she's polite. Then her sister Tiara arrives, and seeing how everyone fawns over her makes Pride a bit jealous. But then she remembers all the horrible things she did in the game, and the petty feeling vanishes. Besides, once she gets to know her, she understands why Tiara is the game's heroine. She's an absolute sweetheart and the only ray of hope for everyone. After introductions, Stale speaks for all three of them and vows to protect the kingdom. The crowd goes wild, especially after the Queen names Pride her successor because of her precognition ability. Later, Gilbert visits to shower Pride with compliments, but also throws in some subtle insults. Stale immediately jumps to her defense, showing how much he's grown into a nobleman in such a short time. He shuts Gilbert down so effectively that he almost sounds like him, which kind of freaks out his sisters. Afterwards, Pride meets Roderick, a super respected knight who congratulates her and says he hopes his son can meet her someday. Meanwhile, the queen is amazed at how the future has changed for the better since Pride got her powers, and she's confident her daughter will be a great queen. 3 years fly by, the siblings are now older and a tight-knit family. We see Stale practicing swordsmanship with Arthur, but he gets a little discouraged when he sees how much better Pride is. That's because, as the game's final boss, she has a totally broken cheat skill with the sword. But to cheer Stale up, she tells him that even if she's good, she's not as strong as a man if he were to pin her down. Hearing this worries Tiara, who says she'll stay by her side to protect her. Pride knows that no matter how strong she is, her fate is probably the same as in the game, but she wants to at least enjoy her time with her family. After practice, Pride and her brother go to check on the soldiers, but Roderick couldn't make it due to some military issues. She's not bothered by it, since she has complete faith that her soldiers can handle their duties without the captain. When she gets to the training grounds, she sees that everyone is incredibly strong and dedicated, training non-stop. She loves seeing it, but it also ticks her off to think that her future self only used these soldiers for her own cruel entertainment. While she's watching them, an urgent message from Roderick arrives. They're under attack. Using a special ability, they manage to talk to him and find out they're running low on supplies. That's when Pride gets the idea to use Stale's power to send them everything they need. Captain Roderick is completely floored to learn about the massive trump card the princess had up her sleeve. Meanwhile, she asks everyone to keep Stale's power a secret because she doesn't want him to be used as a weapon. After helping the wounded, they get a warning that the enemy is going to climb up to Roderick's position. This jogs Pride's memory of a scene from the game, so she fakes a vision and orders everyone to stay away from that spot, claiming the ground will collapse and crush them all. They tell the captain to get out of there, but he can't because his leg is trapped under some rocks. He can't even cut it off since his special ability cancels out sword attacks, so he's totally stuck. Because of this, he decides to stay and fight until reinforcements arrive, accepting his fate. At that moment, his son shows up, complaining that he gave up too easily. Clark, the new leader of the soldiers, cuts the feed so the kid doesn't have to watch his dad get defeated. Seeing the boy cry in frustration, Pride can't take it anymore and comes up with a wild, high-risk plan. She'll go to the battlefield herself to save Roderick. Even though she knows there's a chance, nobody wants her to go because she's too important to the kingdom. But Pride is afraid of not being able to protect her people, and this makes Stale remember their promise. So, he teleports her to the battle. Just as the enemy is about to finish off Roderick, Pride appears and starts fighting, showing off some insane sword skills. She takes down all the enemies right before the ground collapses. She grabs an enemy soldier and whispers something in his ear to make him free them, unless he wants to be buried alive along with them. We then see a scene from the game's past where Roderick was crushed to death and the original Pride mocked his soldiers, which led to Roderick's son vowing revenge. But now, in the present, Pride managed to save everyone because the enemy she captured can control the earth and create a protective shield. Thanks to her strategy and leadership, there were 0 casualties, which is a huge relief for all the soldiers. Stale, however, is mad that he couldn't protect his sister, but he vows not to give up until he can. For her part, Pride insists that the captain and his men should leave first because of their injuries, but Roderick refuses and wants to take her with them. Since Pride won't stop saying no, he just picks her up in his arms and gives her a look that screams, "You and I are going to have a long talk." Between that and the knights staring under her clothes, she can't take it anymore and finally agrees to go with them. They all gather in a private room with her 2 siblings, and the captain's son is there too to hear everything. And then the scolding begins. Roderick grills the princess for going to the battlefield and asks where on earth she learned to use a sword and a pistol. She makes up a story about being a natural talent, and as for the earth-controlling guy, she says she saw him in a vision, because, obviously, she can't spill the beans. Roderick is still upset because he didn't want her risking her life. If anything happened to her, the whole kingdom would go down the drain. Pride knows he's right, but she was fully aware of what would happen to the captain's son if he died, and that's why she did it. Feeling frustrated, she apologizes to the knights for being so reckless, but also makes it clear to Roderick that his own life is worth way more than he thinks. He's incredibly important to the knights and the kingdom. Plus, since she's terrified of being a bad queen, she plans to save anyone she can, whenever she can. That's why she didn't hesitate for a second to go save him. This leaves all the knights absolutely stunned, and since it's an informal meeting, they all kneel to thank her for saving their captain. Roderick's son does the same and admits he felt useless seeing his dad in danger. He promises to work hard to become a knight, even though he's scared he won't make it. But Pride encourages him, promising that even if no one else believes in him, she always will. That's when the boy reveals his name is Arthur, and a light bulb goes off in Pride's head. He's one of the love interests from the game and the only one who can defeat the original Pride. So, using a fake premonition, she assures him he'll be an amazing knight. But just like with Stale, she asks him that if he ever sees her as an enemy, he must be the one to stop her. Meanwhile, Roderick is on his knees, thanking her for saving him and letting him see his family again. While they're all celebrating that he's alive, Arthur wonders, just like Stale, why the princess is so afraid of turning evil. But from that day on, he vows that no matter what, he will become a knight who can protect her, keep her on the right path, and, if she ever needs it, save her just like she saved him. We then jump to Arthur's house, where he explains that even though he always dreamed of being a knight, his special ability is just making crops grow better. People thought it was a waste, that he didn't have a combat power like his dad, so he had resigned himself to being a farmer. But after meeting Pride, he decided to ditch that plan and swore to become strong enough to protect her. That's why the very next morning, he starts training with his father. And even though he can't land a single hit, Roderick notices something incredible. His son has way more talent than he does. Despite not having practiced in ages, he's still a natural with the sword. Meanwhile, Pride is flashing back to a scene in the game where Arthur rejected Tiara just for being the villainess's sister. But Stale snaps her out of it, saying he'd like to become better friends with Arthur. So, they head over to the Knights' training grounds. The moment they arrive, everyone runs to greet Pride, showing just how popular and loved she is. So much so that Roderick even bangs his head against a wall just to get a chance to see her. Even though she was just stopping by to return something to the captain, she ends up witnessing everyone making fun of him for being a drunk who can't stop talking about his son. Just then, Arthur shows up with his father's sword, which he'd forgotten at home that morning. Seeing the princess makes him nervous, and though he has something to say to her, he decides to wait until he's a knight. Stale seizes the opportunity to become his friend and training partner. Pride gives Roderick back the coat he lent her during the battle. At the same time, Arthur and Stale start their training and agree to drop the formal stuff. After all, they want to be friends. Still, Stale takes it seriously and shows he's very skilled with a sword despite his break. That's why he pushes Arthur to take the knight exam as soon as possible, which totally confuses him. He asks why the rush, and Stale explains it's to protect his sister and stop her from doing crazy things like she did in the battle. He also mentions his fear of something unknown, letting Arthur understand he's talking about the same promise he made to Pride, to take her down if she becomes an enemy. For Stale, his sister is everything. She's the reason he is who he is today, and he wants to repay her for it all. That's why he needs Arthur to become a knight ASAP, so they can be Pride's sword and shield together. Even if the speech doesn't fully convince Arthur, he gets that Stale is being 100% real and cares deeply for Pride, so he agrees to support him and teach him how to fight. Stale also promises to do his part to protect her, but he's told he needs to drop the creepy smile and be tougher on his friend, who'll be the knight for both of them. In the end, they become super close and start training together. A few days later, we see Pride cramming in the library, studying up on the loyalty contract. Not to use it for evil, but to avoid making the same mistakes her original self did. Meanwhile, her sister Tiara is reading fairy tales. In fact, one time when they were little, Tiara compared them to fairy tale characters, and Stale almost died of embarrassment. Later, the Queen summons them to give them an update on the post-battle situation and warns them that someone might be forming an alliance against their country. She then brings in Val, the guy who saved her and Roderick, to test Pride's queenly skills. She suggests putting him under a loyalty contract to keep him in check and to squeeze some information out of him about what went down. But the final part of the test is to ask Val himself what sentence he'd prefer, because depending on his answer, things could get a lot worse for him than what's on the table. The guy doesn't want to die, so he agrees to cooperate and serve Pride. So, the contract gets signed. Even though Pride knows this could be her first step toward becoming the game's villain, she doesn't freak out and just accepts her fate. After the signing, she gives Val his orders. Tell them where the prisoners of war are and anything else they want to know. A few days later, Stale goes with her to release the criminal, just to back her up. When Val sees her, he insults her, but Pride gives him two final commands. First, if there's ever a disaster, he must protect Tiara. Second, if he ever feels like he's in danger, he must come to her. With that, she lets him go, leaving everyone totally baffled, especially Stale. To help him understand, she explains it's simple. By signing the loyalty contract, he officially became a subject of her kingdom, which means it's her duty to protect him. Besides, with the orders she gave him, he's not a threat anymore, so there's nothing to worry about. But the one who's really taking this hard is Tiara, who can't understand why her sister is so protective of her, and thinks it's because she sees her as weak. Hearing this, Pride tells her it's because she loves her, just like she loves Stale, and silently prays that even if she turns evil in the future, they'll remember this moment when she loved them with all her heart. Sometime later, the girls start attending Stale and Arthur's training sessions. As the days go by, the boys improve a ton, not just as warriors, but also as friends. The girls have matured too. After the boys train, they bring them flowers as gifts, each one representing what Pride admires most about them. To thank her, they make flower crowns for her to make her look even prettier. As Pride relaxes and watches them, she gives one crown to Tiara and puts a flower in her friend's hair. In this moment, the four of them are the best of friends, but the time for the night exam eventually comes, so Arthur has to leave, with the whole group seeing him off. All of this makes Pride incredibly happy, seeing her world so cheerful and full of color. However, Chancellor Gilbert is watching all this from the mansion with a look of pure disgust. As expected, Arthur aces the exam. The day finally comes for Pride to grant him his knighthood, and he apologizes for making her wait for 2 years. After the party, the four friends get together to congratulate Arthur, and he takes the chance to gift Stale a pair of glasses, just because. They also talk about Gilbert, showing that they're worried about him. A while later, we see Pride arguing with Gilbert, who keeps pushing for a law to register everyone's special abilities. Curious about his behavior, she and Stale decide to spy on his conversation with his father. The king chews him out for being so persistent, but Gilbert is annoyed that after they discovered Pride's precognition, they also had to find a talented kid like Stale. Gilbert keeps arguing with the king, blaming him for what happened to someone named Maria, who is clearly super important to the Chancellor. It turns out she's critically ill, which is why he's so obsessed with finding people with special abilities. He's holding out hope that someone hidden in the kingdom can cure his beloved. Still, the king refuses to approve the law, but he promises his aid they'll find a way to save his wife. That night, Pride remembers a scene from the game where she tortured Gilbert, mocking him for being trapped in an old, ugly body. This helps her remember his whole character arc and how, after the original Pride tricked him, she seized control of all the special abilities and threw the kingdom into total chaos. And the absolute worst part? Maria died the day after the registration law was signed, but getting a law passed could take a week, or even a month. While she's mulling this over in the castle, her father tells her that Gilbert hasn't shown up to work in a while, which gets her and her brother's attention. So the three of them get together to figure out what's up and whether they should be worried. In that moment, Pride is still thinking about the game and realizes they've been handling this all wrong. The real Pride wouldn't wait for a law. She'd just force it through, no questions asked. That's how she figures it out. Maria is going to die tonight. We cut to Gilbert trying to make a deal with some bandits to find a healer, but they couldn't care less and just try to rob him. Right as they're about to rough him up, Stale and Pride show up with the bad news about his beloved. We then get a glimpse of the Chancellor's past. He used to be a thief on the streets until he met Maria, a count's daughter who just wanted him to be happy. They slowly got closer, and thanks to her, Gilbert cleaned up his act. But one day, he found out she was getting married at 16, so they had to say goodbye, even though they were crazy about each other. It was after this news that he got his ability to control his age, so he promised to see her again in a few years. He started training, studying, and working like a madman to meet her again. And that's how he eventually became the kingdom's chancellor and was able to marry Maria. They had a happy life until she got sick, and they knew they'd have to be separated again. While he was desperately searching for a cure, all she wanted was for him to live a happy life for the both of them. Back in the present, Gilbert can't believe what he's hearing. Meanwhile, Stale is ready to end him for all the times he's insulted his sister. But Pride stops him and also forgives Gilbert. After that, they head back to the castle with the guards on their tail. Stale gets Gilbert home safely while she goes to find Arthur. She warns him that what they're about to do is dangerous, but he's willing to die for her. Just then, a completely transformed Stale appears and takes them to Gilbert's house. Once there, he reveals Arthur's true ability. It's not making plants grow, he can heal anything. And thanks to him, Maria is completely cured, and she thanks everyone for saving her. As the couple finally has their reunion, Pride thanks her brother for his help and finds out his new look is because Gilbert messed with his age. At that moment, the Chancellor asks Pride to judge him, saying he's ready for anything. He confesses to all the crimes he committed in his desperation to save his beloved. But for Pride, he's still one of her people, and her duty is to protect him. So, even though she can't just excuse everything he's done, she makes him swear an oath in front of everyone that even long after they're all gone, he will continue to serve as Chancellor and protect the kingdom. Shortly after, Gilbert swears his loyalty to her in a slightly cringy way, making it crystal clear that he's now under Princess Pride's command. After that, everyone heads home. We see Stale and Arthur hanging out after Arthur told the other knights about his special healing ability. Stale finds it weird that he still wants to be a knight, because with a power like that, he could be rich and famous, or even marry into the royal family. But for Arthur, it's a no-brainer. He'll stay a knight because that's what he's always wanted to be. He then tells his friend to stop hiding behind that fake smile and let out all his anger towards Gilbert, because he knows he's been bottling it up. That's when Stale finally snaps and starts throwing things at Arthur, yelling that he's frustrated he couldn't protect his sister again, even after promising he would. But the knight sets him straight, pointing out that thanks to him, all the nasty rumors about Pride are gone, and that he shouldn't feel bad if he can't be there to protect her sometimes. That's what Arthur is for. Just like they said when they were kids. One is the sword, and the other is the shield. So they make a new promise. They'll always have each other's backs, and they won't cry again until they're as old as Gilbert, so they can be more mature. A little while later, there's a party with the Chancellor. Stale is still giving him the cold shoulder, but according to Tiara, he's just jealous, and she tells him to get better and get over it. Right before the party ends, the Chancellor makes a huge announcement. After all this time, he and Maria are finally getting married. A long time after all this drama, we jump to a knight tournament where everyone is fighting for a spot on the Royal Guard, and Arthur ends up winning the whole thing. The event was meant to boost morale, but it was such a hit that now Pride is thinking about giving the soldiers a raise. Just then, while they're in their carriage, they bump into a man on the street who she recognizes as Val. They take him to the castle to patch him up, and thanks to the loyalty contract, he can't pull any funny business. In fact, the contract is the very reason he's there. He was looking for her to ask for help. Val tries to fight the contract's orders, but eventually gives in and asks for her help to save 2 kids, Kemet and Sefech. They were kidnapped by human traffickers, and since they're poor, he has no one else to turn to. He wanted to avoid the princess at all costs, but the contract forced his hand. Everyone is shocked by the situation, but at the end of the day, the kids are citizens of the kingdom, and the princess can't just look the other way. A bit later, her friends leave and she goes back to give Val some food, only to find that he's completely wrecked the room. So she starts asking him about the kids and what they mean to him, but Val gets annoyed with the questions and just says he wants them back so he can live an easy life, basically hinting he needs them to work for him. Tiara is horrified and asks if the kids are important to him, but Val says he couldn't care less about their lives. In fact, he hates them. This really upsets Tiara, who's super sensitive to other people's pain. So she asks everyone else to leave so she can talk to Val alone and figure out why he's so against getting help. Once they're alone, she promises him that the 2 of them will get the kids back by themselves. This just makes Val even angrier. He explains that he's avoiding her because in a way, it's her fault they're in this mess. But despite his hatred and the embarrassment of asking for help, he's willing to do it if it means saving the kids. As she talks to him, Pride starts to realize he's not being entirely honest, or maybe he doesn't even know how to be. Val explains that the kids have special powers, they look out for each other, and they rely on him for everything. That's when Pride asks him what he truly values, and she realizes that loved ones and family are nowhere on his list. He's never felt anything like that before. Talking about this just makes Val more furious. He yells at Pride for making him feel confused, hurt, and angry, and starts punching things until he finally breaks down and cries. She understands it's not that he's denying his feelings, it's that he doesn't even know what they are. She makes him see that he's lived his whole life without being afraid of losing anything, because nothing was more valuable to him than money or his own skin. But now he has the kids, who he sees as his family. What he's feeling isn't hate. It's the worry and fear of losing the people you care about. That's why he wants them back for an easy life, because whether he knows it or not, he loves them. Realizing this, he starts crying even harder. Later, we see Val trying to make a deal with the kidnappers, offering them more kids for their operation. But one of them grabs him with a chain and takes the kids, who are actually Pride and her friends in disguise. They used Gilbert's power to change their appearances so they wouldn't be recognized, all part of a plan to infiltrate the bad guy's hideout. Once they're inside, Stale uses his power to free everyone and teleports the bandits straight into a knight's jail cell. After he and Val are free, they head to the cave entrance while Pride and the others are taken to a cell. There, Pride finds Kemet and Sefech. They're mad when they find out she knows Val, but at the same time, Sefech is really worried about him. While they talk, Val and Stale are busy freeing all the prisoners from the high-security cells, where the kids with the most valuable powers are kept. Then, Stale spots a special cell with a weird light coming from it. He asks Val to cause a distraction, giving him permission to use violence, so he can sneak off and see who's locked up in there. The siblings realize Stale is behind the commotion, so Sefech uses her water magic to fight the bandits, determined to get back to her family. Meanwhile, Stale has reached a boy named Powell, and is freeing him from his chains. Even though Stale offers to teleport him out, Powell refuses. He's terrified of hurting people with a power he never wanted and can't control. His ability shoots out energy non-stop, and it even injures Stale every time he gets close. The kid is so scared, he's not even listening to what Stale is saying. Thinking about what his sister would do, Stale gets closer to Powell, showing him he gets it because he has a special power too. He promises that in a few years, his sister will be queen and will change everything, so no one has to suffer because of their abilities ever again. These words finally calm the boy down, and Stale frees him from his prison, teleporting him to a lake. But using his power so much leaves Stale completely drained, and he collapses on the spot. Back at the hideout, the knights have arrived to save the day and deal with the criminals. In the middle of the fight, Arthur tries to keep Pride hidden, knowing it would cause a huge mess for her and everyone else if she were discovered. Meanwhile, the bandits have found Stale and taken him hostage along with Val. Just then, Gilbert shows up to defend them, buying enough time for the soldiers to join the fray. They're strong, but the bandit leader has the upper hand with his weapons, managing to injure Gilbert and capture Arthur. But this was all part of the plan to give Pride an opening to jump into the fight and take on the leader herself, using her broken final boss skills from the game. She dodges all his attacks effortlessly, but since she's a princess, she can't get her hands dirty, so she lets the knights finish him off. The battle might be over, but then they hear explosions outside. The knights have no idea where they're coming from, so they start running. As they do, they get a report that 2 kids, Sefek and Kemet, escaped on their own, which just annoys Val even more since he's desperate to see them, but when they get halfway there, they only find Kemet. He got separated from his sibling during a rock slide. So while they take her to safety, the others stay behind to try and rescue him. Val tells them to just leave. After all, he's a criminal who went against the kingdom and doesn't deserve their help. Pride, understanding how he feels, orders him to create a wall to block them from helping. And that's when he thanks her for the first time. Once they're out, Pride is worried sick about Val and Kemet and doesn't know what to do, but Arthur has an idea. They go back to the collapse site, and he tells Val to take the kid's hand and move the rubble with his power. But Val says he can't. The trick isn't just his power, but Kemet's too, which can amplify others' abilities. With that boost, he manages to control the whole cave and free the boy. Arthur figured this out by noticing Sefek's power got way weaker after she was separated from her sibling. Not even the kid knew about his own power, because his sibling had forbidden him from using it until he was older. With this new power-up, Val controls the earth beneath them and gets them out of there in a flash. But just when they think they're safe, some bandits in a hidden hot air balloon start dropping explosives on the knights. This causes the ground under Sefek to crack, so Val runs to save her but ends up falling in her place. As he's falling, he can't believe he risked it all for a couple of kids. His mind flashes back to his tough life, having to survive all on his own since he was young. He eventually took a job to get rich quick, but it all went south, and he ended up as the princess's slave, only to get kicked out of the castle. After that, he went back to the slums for the first time in ages and ran into the kids, who started following him just because it was safer. Because of the contract, he couldn't hurt them, but over time he got used to having them around and just let them tag along quietly. He's even the one who gave them their names, using words from another language that matched the ages they looked. After that, they started selling water to help out, and he'd give them a bit of food in return for their work. Eventually, even the people in the neighborhood started seeing them as a family, though Val was the only one who didn't see it that way. Unfortunately, their luck ran out when the child traffickers showed up and snatched the kids, with Val unable to do anything but watch. Since he was a foreigner, they decided to put him to use. They tasked him with gathering more kids in exchange for Kemet and Sefek's freedom. In the end, he realizes he's never had anything precious in his life, but thinking about those 2 kids, he figures it wasn't all bad, and he accepts his fate. But his time isn't up just yet. Pride swoops in to catch him, and, with a whistle, calls for Stale, who uses his power to save them, finally bringing everyone together. Sometime later, life is back to normal, but everyone's worried that Pride might get hurt because they still haven't found the people responsible for the explosions. Just then, Val and the kids show up. Turns out they were sent on a 5-day carriage trip to deliver a message, and they made it back in just 1 day. By doing this, they've proven their worth, and Pride makes them the royal family's personal transporters. She also promises to pay them well and send the kids to school. This shocks Val, who can't believe Pride accepts him despite his past. After everything that's happened, he's ready to become her most loyal subject, even if he's still a bit of a playful jerk. You can see this when he teases Stale about his crush on Pride after she called him her prince. The banter continues, and Val tells Pride she'd have way more fun with him than with Arthur and the others. This triggers her protective side, and she clings to her knight, listing off all his great qualities and how happy he makes her. Right before he leaves, Val asks his boss for one last favor. When the school is ready, he wants his kids to be able to go. A while later, we see Arthur practicing hand-to-hand combat with Gilbert, who is insanely strong. He even challenges Stale to a fight, but Stale turns him down. While they're training, the Chancellor makes Arthur an offer. If he can land a single punch, he'll teach him a technique to knock someone out with a palm strike without leaving a scratch. This gets Stale's attention, and he joins the fight. Just then, Val and his kids arrive, impressed by the fight. Seeing her chance, Tiara invites Sefech to have some cake with her. She invites Kemet and Val too, but when Val tries to grab his sibling, he accidentally takes Pride's hand instead. This leads to the siblings teasing him later, asking if he's falling for Pride. And even though Val denies it, his face turns bright red when he thinks back on everything that's happened. Back at the fight, Pride is trying to think of something to cheer on her friends. So, completely embarrassed, she just starts shouting all the great things she thinks about them. It's super awkward for them, but it also fires them up, and they manage to barely win the duel. During their break, Arthur is down on himself for not being stronger, thinking that during the rescue mission, all he did was run away while Stale handled everything. But Stale scolds him, telling him he's the last person who should be talking down on himself, because he protected his sister during the battle too. This makes Arthur realize that he's finally become a knight who can actually do something for the people who need him, and he feels better than ever. Just then, Pride comes over to wipe the dirt off their faces, telling them how much they've grown and what good people they've become. Seizing the moment, Stale promises her that he will become an exemplary king, and all she can do is be grateful to have such amazing friends. But well, if you've made it this far, comment the word Daisuki to let me know you've reached the end. Here on the screen, I leave you with these 2 cool videos, just like the person watching this video. See you next time. Take care, drink water, take a shower, and bye.